Happy Thursday, Musketeer fans. You're here on your Razercast. This is Jeff Zink, along with Jim Reaker and Zink, the Razor, here to talk about Muskie basketball. It was a big week last week, and we've got more coming up, big weeks. So we'll just start off with saying, hi, Jim. How's it going for you?
Doing pretty well. Tell the fans are coming a little bit late to them today just because Jeff is out in Arizona working with the Reds in their fantasy camp because he's a employee of the Reds Hall of Fame, and so he goes out there in the spring and helps them with their fantasy camp. How's the weather out there? I know we had to change things a little bit because you had some rain out there in Arizona.
Yeah, right now you guys might be better off in Cincinnati. I forgot to check, but it's high 50s and rainy today, but it's been pretty nice all week. Got to play 2 games of baseball today, so that's always a good thing. And we'll have the championship games already over, and tomorrow all the campers get to play against the Reds pros that have been here. But a good fun week. You guys are out there listening, and your baseball fans, contact us down at the Hall of Fame. It's a fantastic week to come out to the Reds spring training facility and enjoy all the festivities. What? We're here to talk about Xavier, not the Reds. And then we talked about last week. What's that?
How'd your team do anyway? You finished
We
first?
represent.
Oh,
we represented. It was you know how they say in the major leagues everybody's going to win 54, lose 54. It's what you do with the other 54. Well, we didn't do much with the other 54.
Oh, okay.
But we had fun.
Good. All right, that's the key there. So, all right, on to Xavier Basketball. We're in the heart of the season. Had a rough week last week.
That's right. Big week last week, and as we talked before the past couple weeks, and you said it, and I said the first thing I'd say is, don't panic, Xavier fans. So we didn't know whether we could have gone 0-4, we could have gone 4-0, anywhere in between. We were thinking maybe 2-2, but it ended up being 1-3. But with some really good news now, got the thumping by Nova. The Butler game certainly could have gone either way, and that's a great thing, having to go to Hinkle. And that Creighton game was a really good game that the Muskies could have taken. But as we said before, Jim, these are 3 teams ranked ahead of the Xavier Musketeers, even though they're in their own conference. So technically we were supposed to lose to them, but I think it could be very different the second time around.
Well, we hope so. And, I wanted to give the fans just a little bit of a reality check. I've been reading some of the boards, and there's some people, getting close to the edge, ready to jump off and throw the towel in on this season and this team. But let me give you some history on this. Remember where we've come from, Xavier fans. 30 years ago, we were not even in a league, or actually had just begun the MCC. And look where we are now. We are playing in one of the top leagues in the country and competing. Okay, we're not in first right now, but we're in fourth. And look at the losses this team has taken. We can just go down the road or down the list here. Baylor, who has been ranked number 1 at one point, was ranked number 9 at the time that they beat Xavier. Colorado, again, we talked about that, was that quick turnaround after the Baylor game. They went out to Baylor, came home, then went back out to Colorado in the middle of the week and lost that one by 2. Villanova, who has been and right now is ranked number 1 in the country, was ranked number 3 at the time. Butler, currently ranked number 12 in the country, and Creighton currently ranked number 6 in the country. Come on, Xavier fans. We're playing the best in the country right now, and things it hasn't gone how we'd hoped they had gone. But, again, except for the Villanova game, as Jeff mentioned, the Butler and the Creighton game were games that we could have won at the end. Yeah, we didn't, and maybe that's a little bit of a problem that this team's had finishing games. We've talked about that before. So, but here's what you got to remember. I go back to 1995 and 96. That was the first year that the Musketeers went into the A-10, a much bigger, tougher conference for them. And in 95-96, the Musketeers were 13-15 overall and finished 500 in the A-10. That was the worst season they've had since then. But here's what they did. They realized they were in a bigger conference. They started to do things a little bit differently, recruit a little bit differently. And I think the whole attitude of the Xavier program and the Xavier dream is we will get there. And they did, of course, from that point on. They started to finish near the top of the A-10 and got to the point where they started to dominate the A-10. So, again, we're not there yet, but I see the Xavier program bucking it up, and we got we'll talk about it in future broadcasts. We got great recruiting class coming in next year. I foresee that it's going where we want it to, so just relax, Xavier fans. And here's the other thing. When you think about this season, again, I just told you the games we lost, and we're 13-5 right now with one of the top schedules in the country. And think about, Xavier fans, if I would ask Xavier fans what is maybe one of the most memorable seasons, the closest they've come to that Final Four playing for a national championship, that was 03-04 when they were beaten by Duke in the Elite Eight and actually was leading a lot of that game. Well, if you recall, halfway through that season, that team was barely 500 and was struggling. So I think this Xavier team can do the same. They can get things together. They got challenges in the future, but it's a long season, and you've said it before, Jeff. It's not how you're playing in January sometimes, but how you're playing in March.
Well, I'll add this, and whatever you want to add to the individual games. We talked earlier in one of the games, we congratulated my old buddy John Basketball on his retirement. One of his favorite phrases was, we got him right where we want him, in front of us and overconfident. So now it's time to pounce.
Yeah, just to go over the games real quickly. The Butler game, free throws 71%. That's about where they're shooting. That's their average. Of course, the problem there is Butler shot 86%, and Butler's always going to shoot a high free throw percentage. So that was a problem. They were out-rebounded. And the turnovers was the big key right there. We lost the turnover battle. We had 16. They only had 9. The positives, you saw Edmund Sumner try to take the team on his back in the second half when they needed him, and he actually scored 22 points, most of them in the last 10 minutes. So that was a positive. The other positive was that this team did fight back. They fought back, and, again, they were within a point of tying it or taking the lead, right near it within a minute at the end. Take away a positive. You're playing in Hinkle Fieldhouse. We've talked about that before. And one other I'd really like to point out, Malcolm Bernard. I don't know if you got to see this game, Jeff, or see a replay, but he hit a big three-pointer right near the end that actually brought him from a 4-point deficit to a 1-point deficit. I like that kid. He's a role player. He does what he's asked to do, and he's come up with some big plays. He's got a lot of experience. And, again, that's maybe one of the weaknesses of this team is leadership and experience. And I see him start to move more toward that role as he gets more comfortable with this team.
I hear you. I wasn't able to see it live, but they had it on a replay out here in Phoenix. And watching that one, I turned it on. Butler, I think, was up 7. And the Muskets came back, and that was a big part of it. So they kept their poise. They hit their throws. They played good stuff, and to only come out of Hinkle with a 1-point loss, you're sitting in pretty good shape.
Yeah. The Creighton game, a little bit uglier. Again, they lost the turnover battle, not as bad. They had 17 to Creighton's 14, but the free throws is what really, that was the story of that game, 55%. They missed 13 free throws, and, in fact, Greg McDermott said in his post-game press conference, he said, hey, if the Musketeers hit a few more free throws, the outcome of this game is probably a lot different. The thing that you don't like about that game is the fact that you lost it at home. Talked about before, we like to try to hold serve at home, and the Musketeers have done that so well over the years. But, again, look, as you kind of pointed out, we still got another game with Creighton. It's going to have to be out in Omaha in the Century Link Center, which I've talked about before, one of the toughest places in the country to play. But, hey, you have the chance to make up for that. And, again, if you have not heard, Maurice Watson, who was injured in that game, did tear an ACL, and he is done for the season. So that will be a different Creighton team, although they played the second half without him and were able to pull out the win. They're still a good team without him. They're not the great team. I mean, I could call them maybe a Final Four team with him. I'm not sure they can make it that far without him, but only time will tell in that one.
I agree with you. Until the loss of Watson, I would have been hard-pressed to decide between Noah and Creighton at the top of the Big East. and how far they could go. But those are the vagaries of the game. You just never know quite what's going to happen.
Yeah, and then the other downfall, I don't know if you saw the end of that game, but there was a point where Creighton was up by 1 point. I believe it was under 30 seconds, and Xavier, on a rebounded missed free throw, had 4 chances underneath the basket and could not get it to go down. I think Sumner had 1, and then Gaston got the rebound, put it back up, and they just couldn't get it to fall through the hoop. A couple times it was up on the rim and just fell off. And then Trayvon Blewett had a nice look near the end on a three-pointer that would have tied the game. So, they had their chances. The ball just didn't bounce their way. Again, the key there was they fought through. There was a couple times in the second half I think they got down by 7-8 points, and they didn't let it get out of hand and fought their way back. So, again, we start to see some very positive things happen, even though, again, we suffered these losses.
I hear you. The big thing is just to put yourself in a good position. And even though we lost 3 games to 3 guys ranked ahead of us, we represented well. And who knows, even if we end up losing all 3 again, we're in good shape. We battled to the end, and who knows what's going to happen comes tournament time. And that sort of tells us to shift a little bit more about what does Coach Mack need to do, especially with the re-entry of Miles Davis into the lineup to set him up better, especially with the emergence of someone like Sumner as the team leader.
Well, again, I think the 2 weaknesses on this team right now, actually I'll give you 3. 3 major weaknesses right now. I do see leadership, and anybody that's seen Miles Davis play knows at the end of last year he was the leader of this team. He takes control. He's a good ball handler. The other thing is he's a very good passer. In fact, I went back and looked at last year's stats. He did lead this team in assists. He averaged 4.1 assists last year, and that was tops for the Musketeers. And also, and Jeff, you've seen enough games to know this, that free throw shooting's been a problem. And he was their top free throw shooter last year. He shot at an 85% clip to lead the Musketeers last year. So if Miles can come back and help in the areas where he has his strengths, I think that can help. He hadn't done much yet, but it just seems like he has trouble getting into the flow of the game. I will tell you, again, I don't know if you saw this. This was near the end of the game. Butler was up by 3 points. Xavier had the ball. Davis was actually in the game and had the ball, and the guy came out to foul him. It was one of those they were going to foul him and not let him shoot a 3. And he saw the guy coming to foul him, and he got the shot. He started to go into a shot, and they almost could have called a 3 free throw foul, which if Davis would have hit all 3 would have tied the game. They went and looked at it and discussed it, and they decided they were only going to give him 2 shots, that it was actually a foul on the floor. And he did sink those 2 free throws, and actually it's the only 2 points he scored since he's been back. But that was just a heads-up senior play experience that he knew what was going on. He knew the situation. He tried to make something happen, and he almost made it happen. So that's where I see Miles Davis helping this team, just the experience of having been there. In the last 2 years in their NCAA runs, he's been a major part of that. So, and again, and here is the key, too. I think Xavier fans will think and agree here that, this whole week has probably been the best week for Miles Davis because it's given him time to get a lot of practices in with the team since they played on Monday, and they don't play again Georgetown until the upcoming Sunday.
Well, we talked about it last week. We've talked about Miles for several weeks now. I think the intelligent thing by Coach Mack was just say, let's get on and get him in the lineup, not ease him in so the guys can get used to him. And it may have affected things a little bit in this round through the tough games, but it will be very different when we get the next set.
Yeah, very difficult thing to measure. Has he been a disruption? I've seen all the games he's been back in, and maybe a minor disruption with the older guys. I don't know, because he's not up to where he was or what they might expect from him. But I don't think the disruption's been enough to change the outcome of any of these games.
And like you said, don't panic, Xavier fans. Lots of season left, and really only a little past halfway of the regular season, and then we get into tournament time. So lots of chances to work through the chinks when as Jim finishes his final thoughts, he'll get us into his thoughts for Georgetown coming up this Sunday.
Well, Georgetown, the Musketeers have already seen them once, beat them out there in Washington, D.C. I think that was New Year's Eve, if I recall, that early morning 11 o'clock game.
Yep.
The Hoyas, we've talked about them a lot on our other show, the Trogcast. If you haven't listened to that, tune that in sometime as we talk about all of college basketball. They're 10-9 right now, and they're actually only 1-5 in the Big East. And we've questioned a little bit of their coaching from John Thompson III, and maybe he should be on the hot seat. And if he was really, would he still be there if he wasn't John Thompson III? So we've discussed that. But they're dangerous. They got to, I think any team, we've talked about it before, in the Big East is dangerous. Anybody can beat you on a given night. We've seen that with St. John's beating Butler. DePaul has picked up a couple wins. So you got to come and play. I would have the fear that they would maybe take them too lightly because they've already beaten them at their place. But I got a feeling after this week, after the disappointment of the 3 losses in a row and the disappointment of Coach Mack, them not doing some things the way he would like for them to do, especially in the turnover ratio, I don't think they're going to come in overconfident. You look at them, and they got Rodney Pryor, who is a transfer who came in his first year eligible at Georgetown's, leading them with 17 points. And then, of course, LG Peak has been there. But, again, I think the Musketeers play a good game. I'm sure it'll be another outstanding crowd, should be for the rest of the Big East season. I think the Musketeers will get back on the winning track against the Hoyas.
I'll add 2 comments to what you just said. One is the answer to the question is, would John Thompson III be on the hot seat if his name wasn't Thompson? And I'd say people would be calling the fire department. It would be super hot on that seat. But with the legacy there, he's going to be able to get it. 10-9 just doesn't get it there. We'll see. The second thing is, Georgetown has played Xavier tough in Cintas the past few years. But I'm with you. After this slate of games, I'm predicting a thumping. I think the Muskies are going to say, we've got to show people that these 3 losses are an aberration, and the poor Hoyas are going to be in front of that Mack truck that's coming through with the Muskies on the back with Chris driving it. And it's going to be a pretty ugly scene at Cintas on Sunday.
Good point, because the Hoyas were the only Big East team to beat Xavier at the Cintas last year. Although I believe, I'd have to check this, but I believe they beat them out in Washington, D.C. last year also. So, you got to be ready every day in the Big East. We know that. And, again, Xavier fans, this is a new reality. You want to play big boy basketball, we're in a big boy league. This is the way it's going to be. And but I think it's exciting. Again, you go back to the early 1980s and where this program has come from and where it is now. It's just we keep moving forward.
And the other side of that, and you do mention it, probably the only thing that could get in the way would be looking forward to the big game next Thursday, what's now called the Crosstown Shootout. It's called the Crosstown Classic, the Showdown. It's been through several names. So when it comes down to it, UC Bearcats versus the Xavier Musketeers in one of the best in-city rivalries. In fact, one of the sites said that these were the 2 colleges the closest to each other physically that face one of these big rivalries, and that happens on Thursday. What should our fans expect?
Well, even though I live in Cincinnati, I can't tell you a whole lot about the Bearcats because it's just a Xavier thing. I don't pay attention to them that much. But I know they're having a great season. They're 16-2 after last night's win. They're actually 6-0 in their league, the American League, which, of course, it's you talk about the Crosstown Shootout, the whole fact that they've kind of reversed roles. It used to be UC was the big national power in the big conference, and Xavier was the up-and-coming mid-major in the mid-major conference, and they've almost reversed roles with all the realignment and how things just fell out. for the Musketeers and a positive. And, of course, the Bearcats have, no shame of their own. They've tried to get into different leagues that would be more competitive, but they haven't. So, I could tell you a couple names I hear when I do listen to Mick Cronin on the Sports Report. I know Troy Copain is their leader. I think he's their point guard. Look at their stats, trying to see what his assists. Yeah, he leads them in assists with 4.6 a game and actually puts up 10 points. And then Kyle Washington, I've heard that name a lot this year, and he, I believe, is a big man underneath. Yeah, he must be because he's averaging 7.4 rebounds and 13.9 points. So, again, and Gary Clark, I think, is another big guy underneath that they have. But here's the reality, Jeff, and you know the reality. It really doesn't matter who the players are and what their stats are in this game because it's that type of rivalry. And as you and I both know, it'll probably be a close game. The chances of it coming down to the last possession are very, very good. It's just, unless you've been here and seen it and lived it, it's hard to even explain to someone else. It's just, it's a bitter rivalry. And again, it was so bitter that we had the brawl back in 2011, and that kind of got people to settle down a little bit. But I start to feel a little bit of a building again, like it's starting to get back to it. Actually, on a side note, I'm in my euchre club, I've talked about, Jeff. Well, there's 8 guys in this euchre club. I guess they didn't read my application when I applied because the other 7 are all Bearcat fans. And we just had a meeting last night, and I was waiting for it. And probably after the first hand, one of them looked at me and said, "What's wrong with the Musketeers?" Of course, I was impressed because a real basketball Bearcat fan put that player in his place because he said, "There's nothing wrong with the Musketeers. Do you see who they've been playing?" And kind of defended me. He's like, "They don't have a problem. Believe me." He was a Bearcat fan, and he just said, "This isn't going to be easy. This is going to be a tough game next week." So, and you look at their 2 losses. They lost to Butler, at Butler, just like the Musketeers. I think theirs was like a 10-point loss. And then they lost to a ranked Rhode Island team at the time, and I think that was on a neutral site, and I think that was a pretty close loss. And then I think one of their biggest wins, their most impressive wins, was they went out and beat Iowa State when they were ranked 19th in the country. And Iowa State has kind of fallen down a little bit, but still I know that I think they call it the Hilton Arena out there is one of the toughest places in America to win, and the Bearcats went out there and won. So it's going to be a great game. It's going to be a tough game. But I think the Musketeers should look forward to it because the Bearcats are doing so well. This could be a great resume game for them.
I agree with a lot of you. You got to remember, the problem with the Bearcats right now is that their league. Nobody really has the American Conference. I got to correct you there. The American League is where the Cleveland Indians play. The American Conference is where the Bearcats play.
That's a baseball league, right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so they don't have a lot of strong teams, so they haven't hit it. Connecticut really fell off the table, even though they were ranked early. So the only team representing right now is the Bearcats. There are a lot of things they're going to hurt them there, but they are playing tough teams. Like I say, there's 2 losses. We're both against teams that are ranked, and they just have the one signature win, and Iowa's kind of fallen the other way. But there's lots of good things going on with them as well. What I'll say about this is you mentioned a good name. Troy Copain is, Troy Bring the Copain is the guy you got to watch. He's the person that the Bearcats run around, and if they can't find a way to do it, it's because they can't get it through Troy. The other thing to remember that always happens, not just with the rivalry, is that both these teams play very similar styles of basketball. Tough on the defense. They like the 3-point. If the 3-point's going well, they're both going well. So it's going to be a nitty-gritty game, and that's the way the rivalry works through and it becomes something. Luckily, things have calmed down since the days of the brawl, And I think Mick and Chris Mack, as they call them, Mick and Mack, both Cincinnati guys, want to make sure this is a friendly rivalry but competitive, and they've done that. So who knows what's going to happen in any of these things as they go through. But the important thing is to try to keep it upbeat and fun, especially with the fans, like some of the things we talked in the Trogcast the other way. Keep the fans positive and friendly, and you hope that no matter who wins, they're going to have a beer afterwards. But both these teams are going to be in the tournament. They're both ranked right now. Who knows after these losses? I mean, it's by the time they play, they're going to be very close, I think, in the rankings as they are now. I think Cincinnati was 20th this week, and Xavier was 16th, 17th, depending on who you're looking at. So lots of fun things that are going on there, and it'll just be a fun game to watch.
It will be, and I won't be there. I have never ventured inside, what is it, Fifth Third Arena now they call it?
Yeah.
It's kind of the way it is, too. Usually there's probably more UC fans that find their way into Cintas Center than Xavier fans that find their way into the Fifth Third Arena. But
as a Bearcat fan, you're not allowed to wear blue in Fifth Third Arena. They'll just turn you right around at the gates. That's why they don't forget. You can't wear blue there.
Yeah. Just so our fans know, Jeff is split down the middle on this one, right? Because he has one of his degrees from the University of Cincinnati and one of his degrees from Xavier University, and we won't put him on the spot. Since this is a Razercast, a Xavier cast, you're going to say that you pull for Xavier more, right? I'm not going to put you on the spot.
What I say is I win the shootout every year.
There you go.
I've never lost the shootout.
You might be the smartest man in Cincinnati, because you might be the only one. Because again, when you live in this city, it's kind of fun because almost everybody in this city, whether they attended one of the universities or not, has an allegiance to one of them when it comes to basketball. So you can usually find somebody on the other side at any place of employment or education. It's and I'm sure on Thursday the work production in Cincinnati, if they could measure that, it probably dips to a yearly low when the crosstown shootout is played. Here's something that has not happened in a while, Jeff. If you think about it, they have moved it back into the second half of the season during their conference schedules, and that had been a no-no sometimes. I think it was Prosser, I know Huggins, they didn't like to play it in the middle of their conference schedules because they thought it hurt their, whoever they played before or after, because it would take the focus off, and it took so much out of their teams because they put so much into that game. But I didn't realize this, I just read this today, that the reason they did that was because when they were playing it in December, the fan bases, the students, weren't in session, and so they weren't around, and they wanted to play it when both schools were in session, so that's why they decided to move it back into January, and they are playing in the middle of their league schedules now.
Well, you mentioned it earlier. It's one of those things that they've moved it around, and it's been on and off. Like you said, Cincinnati holds the edge. I think it's something like 45-29, but Xavier's won 14 of the last 20. But this is a rivalry you got to get going. It's something like, UK didn't play Louisville for so many years, and it's become such a wonderful thing. Or UC not playing OSU in football because they're afraid it's recruiting, or the getting the turf wars there for the win. You got the bragging rights for 51 more weeks. It's a beautiful thing when it's run right. It did have that ugly brawl, but for the most part, it's a great thing. There's been 2 times where the Muskies have beaten UC when they were number 1. Of course, those were, like you said, 2 of the early in the year games, so that makes it not so easy. And then, like you said, since I've been on both sides, you got the Xavier fans that will sit there and go, yeah, we knocked you off the top of the loop. And of course, the UC fans will come back and go, at least we were there, because Xavier, unfortunately, has never been ranked number 1. But it's just a fun rivalry, and we'll have a lot of fun talking about it next week and the day of the game, and then, of course, the week after when we know the results.
Yeah, in fact, one of my favorite, I'd say my favorite crosstown game was, might have been one of the first ones I attended, was the 99-2000 season, and that was actually one of the times that UC was ranked number 1 in the country with Kenyon Martin, and the Musketeers.
That was one of those number 1 knockoffs, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I was there, and I don't know if I've ever felt so much electricity in one building.
Yeah.
It was played late on a Saturday night. I think tip-off was like 9 o'clock, which I think led to some of the attitudes of the Musketeer fans there. And it was just a crazy environment. And of course, as soon as it was over, the crowd rushed to the court, and again, it was UC was ranked number 1. Although I think at the time UC had only played 1 or 2 games. It was really early December, so it wasn't like it was now. And then, of course, the other one, I just watched it today. I remember watching it on TV. Was when Lenny Brown hit the shot at the Shoemaker Center to beat him. And then, of course, that was the famous Andy Mack. The University of Cincinnati, they are number 1 in the nation, and they are number 2 in their own city.
No, that was great. And we mentioned that earlier when we were going through some of the Xavier teams of past as we went through the 7th. That was one of the ones that ended. The game was played in 96, but it was the 97 team. And that Kenyon Martin squad, little snake bit. The Musketeers took them in that, and unfortunately that was the year they went into the week before the tournament, number 1, and Kenyon Martin broke his leg in the league tournament and finished his career that way. And then he jumped off to the NBA, where he spent many years, and now it's just recently retired. So an exciting league.
Yep, it's going to be a lot of fun. Of course, we gotta get through the Georgetown game on Sunday first, so then we'll start gearing it up for the shootout on Thursday. And that's going to be on a national. I think it's on a CBS affiliate, so that'll be on a national station for the country to watch.
Well, that'll be fun, and then, of course, we'll talk a lot about that next week and join in maybe even a little, because it's going to be a big game of the week on our Trogcast on Tuesday, where, like you said, we talk about everything going on in NCAA men's basketball that we can fit into a half-hour, 45-minute program. So lots of fun things. Xavier fans, hold on to your butts. It's going to be okay.
We're okay.
We'll see where things go from there. Mm-hmm. So what have you got for me, Stumpy? You said you had a special question in the wrap-up?
Yeah, I just if you listen to Jeff and I on our Trogcast and our Razercast, I always have to give him a good trivia question at the end. He'd been a little down and out, so I'd been giving him some real easy ones to build his confidence back up. He's been doing really well. I always grade him. But this and again, right in line with what we're talking about, but it's probably a little known fact. In fact, I bet there's a lot of our listeners that may not know this trivia. So here we go. Crosstown shootout. It's a 3-part question. All right? And I will be surprised if you can get any one of the 3 correct. All right? That's how hard this question is. This is like a final exam. All right, you ready?
I have accepted the challenge. You're going to stump me on a 3-part question. Go.
Number 1, the Crosstown shootout. Who coined that phrase for the first time?
Wow. You're going really deep. The Crosstown shootout, because it's gone through many monikers. And for a while, and this has only been the past 2 years, it's been called the Crosstown Shootout. Before that, it was called the Crosstown Classic. And before that, it was for a while, it was the Crosstown Showdown. So it's got to be, but before that, it was a shootout as well. So it's hard to know because there's 2 shootouts there.
So if you're a new listener to our show, this is what Jeff does. He rephrases the question. He starts to talk to himself. All he's doing is stalling and hoping that it pops into his head. Either that or he's Googling out there, but I don't think you could even Google this one.
No, I have no clue, but I just wanted to make it clear that there are, it's gone through many names, you see here, so there might be more than one answer. I have no clue. I mean, I could sit there and say Grover Cleveland, and I'd probably have just as good of a chance of getting it right.
The first man to use the term crosstown shootout in reference to this game was the famous Andy McWilliams, or who we like to call Andy Mack.
Andy Mack. Okay.
Part 2. When did he coin this phrase?
Well, Andy Mack hasn't. I'll say, I mean, Andy Mack was very big back in the late 80s and early 90s. It can't be the new connotation of it. So I'm going to say, just to throw it out there, 1989.
1985.
Oh.
Right before the meeting in January of 1985.
And fans, you need to know this about Jim Reaker. He used to give me like a plus or minus, but I got so good on him, he doesn't even give me that leeway anymore to try to stump me. Anyway, okay, I'm 0 for 2. I got one more shot.
Okay, and this is the essay part of the question. Why did he choose that term?
The crosstown shootout versus anything else?
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you have insider information with Andy McWilliams?
No,
Did you talk to him personally?
No, I actually read a book called Inside the Crosstown Shootout, Cincinnati versus Xavier, a rivalry that captivates the city by Bill Cook. And he has a chapter on Andy McWilliams, and he goes into depth why he chose that term. In fact, he's the one that claims I'm the first one that said that. So I don't think you're going to get this one.
I'm coming. Yeah.
But it'll make sense.
No. Why did he call it the shootout? Yeah, you wanted to give me a hint, but you're afraid I'll give it right if you give a hint. I'll put it to you this way. I think the answer to that is it has to do with the friggin' Clue family. And I think the first name is I Have No.
Okay.
So
I like your honesty. But here it is. In the 1984-85 season, leading up to the 1985 Crosstown Shootout, Xavier had a freshman guard by the name of Byron Larkin, who was a great shooter. And UC had a freshman guard by the name of Roger McClendon, who was a great shooter. And McWilliams, in one of his columns, said this is going to be a crosstown shootout between these two. And that's where the term came from. That was a tough one.
It's an amazing thing. It's a beautiful game, and if you fans haven't had a chance to look at that book by Bill Koch, who's still one of the longtime columnists for Cincinnati Enquirer, now one of the announcers for Bearcat basketball, pick it up. A lot of great detail to it, and you'll really, really enjoy it like Jim did.
Yeah, and actually I tried to see if we could get him on our show maybe this week. And, of course, our next show being next Thursday on the day of the shootout, I bet he's probably got something else booked, so we probably won't be able to get him. But all right, Jeff, well, enjoy your trip back home, back to Cincinnati. We'll tell you you're coming back on Saturday, right?
I'll be there late Saturday night. Mm-hmm.
You'll be here Saturday?
Saturday about 9. So we'll be there in plenty of time to see Georgetown, and then maybe we'll watch the shootout together.
Well, I was just going to tell you this. This will make your travels very enjoyable. When you make it back here Saturday, the forecast here, 65 and sunny.
That's because I'm going to bring the Goodyear weather back with me. All right.
All right. Well, I'm sure you got to get back to work out there. Thanks for joining us from across the country. And Xavier fans will end it by saying, go Muskies.
Go Muskies.